So between you and me, I've been a little bit addicted to these mousses. I only discovered the recipe a few months back in my son-in-law's professional cookery book, and I've made them quite a few times since. They're easy to put together, they taste delicious, they're full of flavour, and you know the best thing about them is that they will last as long as the use-by date on your cream, and sometimes that's up to 2 weeks. They're a lovely make-ahead dessert, perfect for the end of a heavy meal or just when you feel like a little sweet treat. And this is how you do it. So these little Dariel moulds have a capacity of 125 mils. That one does too, just a different shape. However, you can just use a ramekin. You don't need these. They just look pretty. All of them look pretty and they all turn out really well. So the recipe suggests using almond oil, and the only reason I've got a bit of almond oil is because I've been experimenting on making my own skincare. It's still in the experimental phase, but I've also been putting it on my hair. And that's why I've got almond oil. But normally at work, I just use a neutral flavoured little bit of oil like vegetable oil, or you could use a spray oil like coconut. And they just need a light little grease. And this just helps when you go to take them out later. So there's 2 types of gelatin you can buy. You can use gelatin leaves or you can use powdered gelatin. I usually just use powdered gelatin, but in this video I'll demonstrate both. Now for this amount that I'm making today, you only need 3 sheets of gelatin. And so what you do with these is first of all, put them in some cold water for between 5 to 7 minutes until they're softened. The way gelatin works is that first of all you have to bloom it in cold water and then add it to a warm or a hot liquid so it dissolves completely and activates. So for the chocolate mousse, I do this first and then I put the chocolate mixture on the stove. So I'm using 70% dark chocolate today, which I've just roughly chopped into small pieces, and that's 125 grams. And I just place that into a small saucepan together with 75 grams of caster sugar and 50 mils of water, which is just over 3 tablespoons. Now I put this on the stove, and over a low heat I stir this continuously until the chocolate is melted and the sugar is dissolved. This only takes a few minutes. And once it's lovely and melted, remove it from the heat. So that's been about 6 minutes now and the gelatin is nice and soft. So I squeeze it with my fingers, just squeeze the water out, and then add that to the hot chocolate mixture and stir it well so the gelatin completely dissolves in the hot mixture. And once that's thoroughly mixed in, then I transfer it to a bowl. So I'm going to let that cool down for a little bit. Now this won't take long because I've only cooked half the quantity, and also it's already nice and thick. So I've measured 350 mils of whipping cream, and I'm going to whip this lightly, meaning that as soon as I see the soft peaks forming, I'll stop. So it's holding its peaks and it's not over whipped. Now it's best to fold the cream into the chocolate, not the other way around, because I want to keep this as light as possible. So I just start with 1 spoonful and just work the cream into the chocolate mixture, and then I add the rest of it. Work the rest of the cream into the chocolate. And that's how easy this mousse is. Right, that looks good. Looks nice and smooth. and airy still. And then it's just a matter of putting the mousse in the moulds as best you can. And because it's so thick, I usually find it easier to do with just a spatula, or achievable with just a spatula. Now these will firm up because of the gelatin. So what I like to do is just smooth them over the top with a knife to flatten them out. And I've run out of paper towel, but I've got a clean tissue here, and I'll just go around the edge, just give it a little wipe. And I'm going to place these in the fridge to set, and they don't take too long. And when they are set, that's when I cover them with Glad wrap and put them back in the fridge, if I'm not eating them all straight away. I've grated 2 medium juicy lemons, and I'm just going to put that grated rind, finely grated rind, into a little saucepan, together with the juice from the 2 lemons, which I measured as 90 mils. But this recipe is quite forgiving, so whatever 2 juicy lemons give you. 125 grams of caster sugar and 50 mils of water. Now I take this over to the stove, and over a lowish sort of heat, just stir that continuously until the sugar has dissolved and it comes to the boil. And once it comes to the boil, I remove it off the heat. And this is totally optional, but I find that the lemon one looks a bit pale, so what I do is just add a couple of drops of yellow food colouring, which will give it a lovely colour once it's done. That represents lemon, because it definitely tastes like lemon. Now I'm going to use powdered gelatin for this one, and that's actually my preference because I find it's quicker. So with the powdered gelatin, you sprinkle it over cold water. So I've got 3 tablespoons of cold water there, and I need 2.5 teaspoons of gelatin powder. And give it a little stir and leave it for just 1 minute, and that will bloom the gelatin. Make sure it's all stirred in properly. I pour my lemon mixture into a bowl, and after the minute is up, the gelatin will go really thick. So I put this into the the hot lemon mixture. And this now activates the gelatin, but I make sure that I stir that thoroughly in until it's all dissolved and the bloom gelatin is melted in the lemon mixture, in the hot lemon mixture. And what I do now is I wait for this to cool down until it almost reaches setting point. And you'll know that because it will start to get thicker and coat the back of a spoon. And this will take, for this quantity, about 20 minutes or so. And if you've got a thermometer, so it's usually between 25 and 28 degrees Celsius. And while that's cooling and doing its thing, I'll get the cream ready that goes in it later. And that's 350 mils of whipping cream. And you just want to whip this lightly, just until soft peaks are starting to form. So when there's peaks holding their shape, well, I probably over whipped that, but that's okay. If you whip it too much, it's just harder to fold it into the lemon mixture later. But that's fine, it's not over whipped. So you still want it quite thick, because this will make your mousse nice and light. So I'll pop this in the fridge while I wait for the lemon mixture to cool down. Now the lemon one's ready. It's registering 25 degrees, which is perfect, and you don't need a thermometer. You can tell because if you put your spoon in there and put a line down. You probably can't see that in the camera, but the line stays. So now I just take the cream out of the fridge that I whipped earlier and work a spoon in, and then work the rest of the cream in. And once that's worked in, then I pour it into the moulds. And there will be some tiny little lumps and you're thinking, oh my goodness, what's that? And it's just the lemon rind. So as you can see, it makes a few for half a recipe. But on the website in the recipe, I'll leave the amounts for a full version and a half a version like this. And then I'll just wipe them around the edges a bit. Now that was a messy one. I got most of it over my hands. Okay, this is going in the fridge to set. The recipe calls for fresh raspberries, but they're super expensive. So I just use the frozen raspberries. And I've had this defrosting overnight, and it's 500 grams of frozen raspberries. Now I'm just going to put them in a colander. And then the idea here is to get as much raspberry through the sieve as I can. And I just do that by stirring vigorously for a few minutes. Uh-oh. I dropped a bit. Because you don't want the seeds in them. You just want all the flavour, but not the little seeds. And there's so many seeds in raspberries. And when you can't push in through anymore, because believe it or not, that's all seeds in there, you should be left with a beautiful coloured liquid. One more stir for luck. Oh yeah, that's got a bit more. And then to the raspberries, I add 100 grams of icing sugar. And I stir that until that's all dissolved. And there'll be lumps, so get your whisk. And that's just frozen raspberries that have been pushed through the sieve and the icing sugar. Then into a small saucepan, squeeze a half a lemon and 50 ml of water. Now that's not much liquid, so that's just going to heat really quickly. So what I'll do is I'll bloom my gelatin now. So I measure 3 tablespoons of water into a little glass dish or a dish, and then I sprinkle 3 teaspoons of gelatin on top. And you should always sprinkle the gelatin on top of the water, not the water on top of the gelatin. And I give that a good stir, and that'll take just about a minute to bloom. And in the meantime, I'm going to take the pot over to the stove. So I'll bring that small amount of lemon juice and water to the boil. And as soon as that's boiling, I remove it from the heat and add the bloom gelatin, which has gone quite hard now, and stir that until it's all dissolved in the hot liquid, which activates the gelatin. Then I whisk this mixture well into the raspberries and icing sugar. And again, I'm going to leave it for a little while until it almost reaches setting point, but this won't take very long because the raspberries were cold to start with. And in the meantime, I'll get the cream ready to go into this a bit later. Now the raspberry mousse only calls for 200 ml of cream and whipped lightly, so not like you're going to put them on scones, say for instance. But until it's sort of holding its shape. So the raspberry mousse has only been like 10 minutes since I've done this, and if I run my finger through the back of a spoon, the line stays, which means it's time to fold in the cream. And it's better to fold in the cream to the mousse than the mousse to the cream. And I'll just start with 1 spoonful just to loosen it up a little bit. I did find with the raspberry one when I made it that I did need the whisk at the start just to get that cream in there because the raspberries are so cold. And once you've got the first spoonful done, you can add the rest. Yeah, with the raspberry one, I need to use the whisk a bit just to get rid of those lumps from the cream because the frozen raspberries are super cold. Then I just pour this mixture, this is runnier than the rest because it's got less cream, into the durry or moulds or ramekins. Isn't the colour magnificent of this? It's just raspberries. How vibrant they are. I think nature has the most beautiful colours in the world. And again, using a clean paper towel, or in my case a tissue, just wipe around the edges. And I'm going to pop these in the fridge to set. So the mousses have been in the fridge now. I don't even know if mousses is a word. So the mousse have been in the fridge now for about 3 hours, and I just had one. I had a chocolate one, so delicious. And I was going to film unmoulding them, but I am really fatigued. So I'm going to wait until tomorrow and then I'll unmould them. But what I like to do now they're set, is either just cover them individually in wrap or pop them into a big container with a lid, and that way they'll keep fresh and free of any fridge smells. I hope you weren't counting them. There might be less by tomorrow. Now what's really great with all these mousses is some Chantilly cream, because the raspberry and the lemon one in particular are quite tart, and all of them are not overly sweet, and all Chantilly cream is thickened cream flavoured with a bit of vanilla extract and either icing sugar or caster sugar. So in this bowl I have 250 ml of whipping cream, to which I add 25 grams of caster sugar and just 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And I whip this well. And completely optional, but it looks pretty. If you've got a piping bag, I like to put this in a piping bag. Nice. So what I like to do is just get a knife, a flat knife, and dip it in some hot water, and then get the mousse and run this all around the outside of the knife, and it should just slip out perfectly. That one had an air bubble in it. I'll demonstrate another one. So just a warm knife and around the outside of the mousse. And just prise it out, just slightly using your knife. And it comes out lovely. And I'll show you this one in the glass dish. Same thing, around the outside, and then just prise it out. Round the inside with the knife and prise it out. I've got so many mousses here. And you can decorate these any way you please. Or just serve them with Chantilly cream on the side. And if for some reason you're finding them hard to get out of the moulds, just pop them in a dish of warm water just for 20 seconds or so. Maybe a few raspberries. 3 is always a good number in cooking or serving. And with the lemon one, maybe simply just a bit of lemon rind. And for the chocolate one, I'm just going to put some little chocolate sprinkles over the top. And let me see if I can capture the texture of these for you. They're soft and creamy. And you know, if you've had them in the fridge for a few days, just unmould them and then leave them to sit at room temperature, and they'll soften a little bit and make them more, you know, delicious. And my favourite, well, it changes daily. Today I'm enjoying the chocolate mousse, but the lemon and the raspberry one are equally delicious. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.